Hello viewers, Assalamu alaikum. Today I will discuss on rights of aboriginal people in France listed. So now search in Google World Directory of Minorities and Indigenous People France. Britons are Celts who live in northwest France, the present administrative region of. People also ask, how did France treat the indigenous people? What aboriginal rights are referred to in the declaration? What are the rights of indigenous people under international law? What are France's indigenous people called? France World Directory of Minorities and Indigenous People. Current issue and background information about minorities and indigenous people in France. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It establishes a universal framework of minimum standards for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the indigenous peoples of the world, and it elaborates on indigenous France relations. The Canadian Encyclopedia France saw indigenous nations as a alliance and relied on them for survival and for trade wealth. Indigenous people traded for European goods. Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, Wikipedia. It establishes a universal framework of minimum standards for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the indigenous people, the world, and it elaborates on UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. People also search for rights of indigenous people PDF, how to protect the rights of indigenous people's rights. Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, PDF. Indigenous People's Right, International Law. Minorities and indigenous people, UNHCR, as a violence and a persecutions increasingly force millions to abandon their homes. UNHCR strives to ensure that the rights of all refugees and other indigenous people overview. Related sources, UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People summary, Article 24 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, KT Nation, City Nation, UNDRIP signatories, Indigenous Rights Movement, United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. France people, is UNDRIP legally binding? Indigenous people, Amnesty International, Indigenous World 2022, France, Guyana, IWGIA, Discover Canada, Canada's history is Canada. This is other option of the indigenous people list. So thank you everyone for watching video.